All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome on back for another fantastic edition of Traders Talk, our live Q&A workshop, normally hosted live inside our Cybergroup trading room. Of course, today, a special treat for all of us in social media, Facebook Live and YouTube. You folks have access to this workshop today. It'll be on our stream just later on as far as the recording, so you could always come back to this later on. For all of us there, my name is Josh Levitan. I'm the senior instructor here at Cyber Trading University. I've been with Fausto for the last 6.5 years, trading the markets, day trading with our students live inside our trading room. Great to see all of them here today as well. Tim, Randy, Bonnie, Scott, Gary, Lewis, Chuck, Joyce, and all of our students there. Like I'd said, I want to start Traders Talk today pretty much, the way that we've always covered Traders Talk live inside our trading room, and that's simply a trade by trade analysis, especially for a morning like today. So what I'd like to do just to begin is I'd like to actually just show the morning picks that we ended up posting. Of course, for anyone that was watching with Fausto earlier, whether it be live inside the trading room or on social media, you folks should have seen this list here at the end. And we had our pre-market list for all of us there in Cyber Group early. But, we ended up choosing AGEN, ULBI, MITO, and a bunch of others, right? So first and foremost, how do we cut this list down to a group of like maybe one or two or maybe three stocks for us to try and trade? Because keep in mind, we're not going to watch every single one of these stocks at the same time. We're not going to be trading really more than just one stock at a time anyway. For any of our more experienced day traders here inside Cyber Group, perhaps you trade a couple at the same time, but it's not needed. If you're following a big mover, you don't need to trade more than one stock at a time. You don't need to trade the craziest, most volatile mover out there in order to make your days pay. But how do you remain focused? How do you remain disciplined and just do exactly that? So, to begin, what I personally do right away is I'll follow stocks that I'm very familiar with just on a day by day basis or week by week basis. Not every one of these stocks I trade every day, let alone I've traded even before once. So, to begin, for example, there are stocks on this list that I am pretty familiar with as a day trader. Stocks like Nikola, stocks like Gevo, and well, when it's moving off of news, and especially yesterday, AT&T. It's a very liquid stock, tight spread, just like you could see on the far right-hand side of this screen. And I'll get to that in a moment. But, hey, if I'm familiar with those three stocks, and more often than not, I do pretty well on them, wouldn't it make sense for me to follow those three stocks leading into the market open? As the market opens up, wouldn't it make more sense for me to stick with what I know? I actually had a trader live inside our trading room earlier today, and I just had to tell him exactly this because he was looking at AMC. You could see all my wacky lines on the chart for AMC. I did prep this also, but look at this trade. Hey, it's just very choppy, not a whole lot really happening just yet. But for as much as this stock popped yesterday, this student thought, hey, this could be a good stock to trade this morning. And it definitely could have been. But they ended up mentioning, hey, I ended up losing on this stock 5 times yesterday. So right away, I said back, hey, if you lost more than you won on just one given stock, why would it make any sense for you to gamble again on a stock that you just don't perform as well on? There's so many other fish out there in the sea to try and catch. So, this AMC trade just dropped the ego a bit. And I say that in a good way. We all have ego, as sweet and as nice as we all are. But it's to say, hey, move on to another trade. There's no problem in doing so. So, getting back to the list here, you have the Nikola stock and Gevo and AT&T. This morning, myself, the first stock I ended up jumping into myself was AT&T. Well, the first real catch I caught. I ended up trading AGEN also right out the gate. I'll get to that in just a bit. But the better move was on the AT&T trade. So I ended up taking my lines off this stock because I wanted to do the prep work in front of you folks. So let's say if you're looking at this AT&T trade, right, from pre-market going into the market open. Now, of course, this stock has been dropping from yesterday. It's been dropping in pre-market early. But after 8:30, this stock was beginning to make a bit of a bounce back up. So, at least in terms of the direction of the stock, I'm not necessarily looking for continuation right out the gate. I'm not going to jump in this as a short right away as much. I need to find where the smart money is. I need to look for where the big iceberg orders are on level 3. I would need to look on time and sales to see if there's any big dark pool transactions or at least any iceberg orders that were previously filled. So, first and foremost, for all of our students live inside the cyber group room, at least, I want you folks to answer this only. For Chuck and Phil and Tim and Randy and Bonnie and everybody else, of course, where are we most likely to find the big iceberg orders on level 3? Every stock is different, right? So every stock is going to pose different levels, maybe an iceberg order here or there compared to another stock. But I had mentioned this last week. It was a silly reference, but I thought it stood out. If you're ever lost in the woods, you look up at the North Star to try and find your way home. That's been the old adage, at least. If you ever get lost on that order book, level 3, our North Star, so to say, it's 50-cent levels and whole numbers. Exactly. Like Tim and Scott and Phil are all answering, and Daniel on YouTube also answering whole dollar levels and half dollar levels. Exactly. So right away going into this morning, perhaps I'll put lines on my chart exactly there, every 50 cents nearest to where the stock is trading. And you don't need to go too far out from where the stock is trading to do that, but let's just say if I put these lines at prices like 29 and 29.50 and 30, at least by putting these lines here early in pre-market, it helps me visualize, because much more often than not, those iceberg orders are going to be there. If not right out the gate, they certainly will pop up throughout the course of the morning. So at least by having these lines here, it just keeps a good spotlight on those price levels. It helps me visualize a potentially big support or resistance. Now, what I'm going to do next, I want you folks to know, is I'm going to bring up what we call level 4. I'm going to bring up Bookmap, right? You do not need Bookmap in order to go back on the time and sales program here. But it is to say, though, at least here, where you look at this big spike of volume right at 8:49 Eastern time. I mean, what the hell is that all about? It shows just about 360 plus thousand shares of volume filled on the way down here. So it seems like we had a bunch of sell-off around 29.50 or so. And alongside that, a couple of other larger spikes, roughly around the same price here, maybe from beforehand, earlier in the pre-market hours. So you could certainly tape read, do it the old-fashioned way, at least, if you were there live in pre-market, to go back on the time and sales. Just to expedite the process here, I will bring up our level 4, our Bookmap program. So you could see, and this is based on the big dots, the balls, as Fausto would nickname it right here, the dots, the balls on Bookmap, you could see a 250,000 share transaction, a print on the tape. Well, that was filled exactly at $29.47. Think of it this way. What if you ended up seeing a 250,000 share iceberg order on level 3? Or just on the heat map here, one of these orange lines. Even at 29 bucks, whole number, right? In pre-market, there was about 45,000 shares on the bid sitting there. All right, well, what's bigger, 45,000 or 250,000, right? You tell me. So it's for that exact reason why I have to respect 29.50 and in particular 29.47. There is a very big transaction filled right there in pre-market. So that price level is likely to become a significant support, significant resistance as the market opens. All right. So, there wasn't a whole lot on the tape really outside of that one bigger transaction. There could have been other volume filled, but that dot definitely was the biggest spike of volume that was filled there. So after the market opens up, for all of our students live inside the cyber group room, you folks should know, as the market opens, and actually I say this more for any of our students that have access to the phase 2 curriculum. That's something that we'll talk about going into this week, at the end of this week rather. But as the market opens up, I'm going to show you this next dot or ball. This is the opening bell print. At the market open, you tend to see a slew of volume get filled, but right out the gate at the market open, you tend to see this very big transaction that pops up on the time and sales. So this is an aggregation of orders that were sent from pre-market to fill right as the market opens up. It's not like one person out there. But it is to say, hey, if we had 676,000 shares filled exactly at one price, That's like seeing a 676,000 share iceberg get filled. Okay, well, hey, look at this. Right out the gate as the market opens, you have a huge order that pops up at 30. Again, whole number. So it's to say a 241,000 share order on the ask popped up. That's huge. Well, if that's huge, then how much should I respect this price level then? At 29.90, 676,000 share print. So what I'm going to do is draw one more line at 29.90 just to denote the opening bell print here. And I'm going to go from left to right. So as the market opened up, we see this drop right away. This drops like a rock. Let me ask, for all of us on YouTube and Facebook Live, I want you to answer this question here with me. For all of us in Cyber Group here too, please partake as well. Was anybody here this morning looking for the bounce on AT&T today? Was anyone looking at this in pre-market saying, well, at some point, this is going to make a bounce, and I'm going to try and capitalize on that? Was anyone here distinctly looking for a bounce on AT&T today? Mike says he was. Lynette says that she wasn't, which is fine. I'm just asking to begin. So, there's so many other stocks that you could have looked at right out the gate this morning. Michael looks like he was following AT&T with us. I was. Alex said he was right out the gate. So here's the thing. My best entries to buy a stock are directly after the stock breaks through a big level on the way up. Think about that sentence and take it literally. My best entries to purchase a stock, to buy a stock, are directly after the stock breaks through a big level on the way up. So in theory, I know this is easy to say in hindsight. I did not take this trade, so I could say in theory. In theory, this seems like a really simple bounce spot right here. I mean, it held off, pre-market lows at 29.35-ish or so here, but it seems like when this broke through these two lines right here in pre-market, could have made a nice squeeze, a nice bounce back up, held above it as support before it moved up higher. Now, that was before the market opens. I had asked if anyone was looking for a bounce because, well, if you were expecting a bounce right out the gate at 9:30, you would have been screwed. Imagine buying this stock right here because you were assuming support to hold. Makes for a small little bounce, but when this sucker comes back down, you really need to realize fast what's going to happen. Because if this stock blows right through 29.50, 29.47, that big smart money print that we had in pre-market, then I would only assume that it's going to go one way, right? So I was looking for a bounce this morning. But as soon as it broke right through these two lines, I knew exactly where this stock was going to next. I knew because I did the prep and pre-market. I put the line there at 29 on my own platform. So it's to say, as this stock kept dropping, I was waiting for 29. I was waiting for the next major level of support. Now, at this point, let me tell you what I did because it didn't come without a loss first. It actually seems like it could have worked out perfectly. Because on a 1-minute chart, you could see that it broke below 29. It looks generally like it held above or held under 29 after. And then on this green bar, when it breaks through $29 on the way up, that's what leads to an entry, right? My best entries to buy a stock are directly after it breaks through a big level on the way up. So actually, I was watching this so closely. When this broke down below 29 on this bar, it actually broke back above 29 by a smidge. And on this bar, I jumped in initially. So I ended up getting stopped out on an 8-cent loss at first. Right place, wrong time, right? Now, I ended up setting up another order because I wasn't deterred by taking the loss. I mean, I knew that I was watching the right level or right spot, but I don't control this stock. What if the Bears wanted to squeeze this down to 28 first or 28.50? So, you know what? I'm going to take my time, at least wait to see what happens here. And then when this ended up beginning to move back up towards 29, I kind of leaned into the trade. I got in even a little lower than 29. I don't recommend for really many at all to do that. So that came with risk, but fortunately it paid off. My entry on the second trade I took here on this green bar, it was at 28.97. I would normally wait for it to break back over 29. Intuition told me to take the trade there, and it paid off. But again, normally I would just buy on this green bar after when it breaks back through this level. But here's the thing: on Bookmap on level 4, we saw a big resistance at 30. And we know how big this price level is, the 684,000 share print. But 29 is pretty big too. 29 is pretty big. You could just see based on the heat map, it shows, a darker shade of red here. But at a whole number, you're likely to find a bigger iceberg there anyway. It was roughly about 100. Actually, it was a hell of a lot more than that. If you look by the time this order actually gets filled, it was like a 200 plus thousand share bid. I don't know if you could see that. It's kind of on the bottom right of my book map here, the number 221,000. So that order ended up growing to be quite big. It's a pretty big level. So here's another line that I live by, right? The first line that I gave you was that my best entries to buy a stock are directly after they break through a big level on the way up. My second line that I'm going to give you is that when we see a big volume level get filled, I'm expecting to see a pretty big result. Now that sounds pretty simple, right? Sounds pretty straightforward. For anyone on YouTube or Facebook Live that's kind of unfamiliar with how I instruct, you might be sitting there and saying, well, of course, dummy. Well, think of it this way. When this breaks back over 29, I'm not looking for a dinky 5-cent profit, guys. I'm not looking for a 10-cent profit here. If you make it, great. This is a big volume level. When a big volume level gets filled, I'm looking to see a pretty big result after. All right. Let me ask really quickly. I just want to make sure. Could everybody in the live trading room see Bookmap? Scott says he can't. I'm showing it from my end, it seems like. Alex sees it. Gary, Wayne. All right, little scare just came in, actually. One of our IT folks mentioned that they can. All right, so if you can't see Bookmap live inside the room, just do me a favor. Just log out, log back in. Looks like most of us see it, but there may have been a slight little issue. Norman can't see it. Just do me a favor, Norm. Just log out, log back in. You'll be good. All right, all of us on YouTube, I believe you folks are good to go. So hopefully we'll get that cleared in a second for the few of us there. But nonetheless, when this breaks back over 29, I'm not looking for 8 cents, guys. I'm not looking for 10 cents. I'm looking for a move that's worth the opportunity. This was a big level, so I was holding on through here. I ended up getting out on this trade at 29.26 or 29.25 here, and I'll tell you, I think I sold myself short afterwards because, well, it ended up dropping down. I was content with taking a 30-cent profit after taking an 8-cent loss, right? Make up for the loss and get an extra few cents out of it. It's good. Moved on to another stock after. It's still really early in the morning. So, you know what? I was following a couple of other trades, like I'd said on Nikola and, the AGen stock that was on our list also. Well, this ended up making a pretty nice move back up, didn't it? So I could have held on. Just that's not really my cup of tea, me personally. I'm not a scalper. I'm not trying to make, 10-second trade, but I'm not trying to hold on all throughout the morning. If there's other stocks that present good opportunities, I want to keep myself open for that. So in hindsight, I could have held on, but I'm pretty content with taking the profit around 29.25 here. Once it ended up re-breaking through that price, that could have seemed to have led to a nice squeeze back up again for a new entry. Notice what happened afterwards. 29.50 became a major resistance again. A pretty big iceberg order popped up here. So to see this move back up to 29.50, which we already had actually set as a really big pre-market level, I'll be transparent here. I wasn't watching this at the time, but I would not have taken this trade off of 29.50 right out the gate here, right off the pop. I would have been more patient waiting for some false breaks, some shakes. It looks like in hindsight that wouldn't have been the right move, right? Ended up blowing right over 29.50. Well, look what happened. Stock ended up essentially holding right under, flawlessly under. Obviously, it was the high from earlier here, but the opening bell print, that 680 plus thousand share transaction, that ended up becoming a major resistance throughout the mid to late morning here so far. And now finally, this thing is starting to squeeze back up through this level. So we're not going to trade this live, folks. We're going to actually go on to another stock just to review from earlier this morning. I just want to mention that right here, when it breaks through this level on the way up, if you are expecting this stock to make a better run in the next hour, hour and a half from now, that quantifies as a really good entry to try and anticipate a pop and to go with momentum. When it finally cracks back over the 29.90 price, if you were to jump in right at 29.91 or 92 on this bar as it broke through the level going up, that would have quantified as a great entry. Does that mean that this is going to run now? No. This might have some shakes first. It still has to blow over 30. So this might be shaking around a small bit, but all I'm saying is this would quantify as a very good entry. You know, you set your stop right below the level. You don't want to risk too much, because if this fails to break over 30 and if this really doesn't make the big squeeze up, again, it's just like I said before. When a big volume level gets filled, we're going to see a big result. So what's the point of holding on any longer than you need to? All right. And actually, I want to jump to my next stock now. Actually, it wasn't the AGEN trade. I'm actually going to show that quick. Looks like this is dumping back down. This was a stock that we had on our morning watch list here. You could see I took the time to prep this chart up. I didn't delete the lines like I did on AT&T here. But let me jump to Nikola. Nikola could not be any better of an example of showing, why you don't need to hold on any longer than you should, in the sense of, a pop or expecting a move up higher. Now, I'll jump to Bookmap for Nikola first, actually, just to show what the order book looked like. Again, for any of our new students joining us here inside the live trading room, or for anyone on social media, one quick tip is just to focus on 50-cent levels and whole numbers. That should always be your North Star, right? Stupid reference, but it's true. 13, 13.50, 14 and above. So after the market opens up today, this ended up beginning to, take its time, but ended up making this huge explosion over $13.50. You could see that there is a group of orders here that popped up, 1340, 1345-ish, and then at 1350. So this came pretty unexpected, where this was kind of coiling underneath its own opening bell print and underneath these orders that were showing on Bookmap. But when this begins to blast over 1350 finally, we should expect a pretty big move. Doesn't guarantee that move is going to be up, but of course it's easy to say that. This ended up making a very nice run. I know the EV stocks today ended up mostly performing really well, so this being one of them ended up making a big squeeze. Here's what I want to show you. You could see on Bookmap that, the next whole number, 14, there's a 65,000 share order that popped up here. I mean, that was there right from the market open. So if anyone was long on Nikola from the morning, you would have to respect 14 as a resistance. And I would look to just get out and take the profit and, try and reposition yourself, for the next trade if there is one. Now, where's my position manager here? I'm going to show, or I'm going to tell you what I did on Nikola here today. I didn't trade this out the gate. I ended up catching this off of 14. So I ended up jumping into Nikola here. My first trade on this was at 9:58 Eastern time. Well, you could see it ended up teasing the pop over 14 here. This is prior to my first entry. But hey, why was this failing to break any higher? There seemed to have been a pretty big order of its own right at 1405. Roughly at 1405, there was about 70 plus thousand shares, 77,000 shares at 1405 as well. So not only was 14 a big level, but 1405 was as well. Well, I ended up jumping into this trade right here. I ended up getting in right here because as this was teasing the next pop off of 14, I was led to believe that, hey, if this is, such a big level, not even 1405, but 14, if that's such a big level, then hey, if it breaks back over this price and if the stars align, that is, then this could make its move right here. So, you know what? I jumped in at 1402 right here. Well, I was right. It broke over 1405 pretty quick. It was moving up. Things were looking good. Now, at this point, you can see, unfortunately, for as big and powerful as 14 was, and for as big as powerful as 1405 actually was here, I thought this was going to fly. I thought this would have led this to easily break 1410, move on up, and that's, maybe get out at 1450. Well, one can only wish, right? So as this unfortunately came back down, I ended up wasting the profit on this trade. I got out exactly break even on my first trade at 1402. I got in at 1402. I got out at 1402. Pretty disappointing because it ended up, shaking around 14 after. It broke back down. Now, I ended up going back in on this trade a bit later on. I ended up jumping back in on my second trade here. This was right before 10:30. So I was moving on to other stocks afterwards. This just wasn't making its big move at the time. I'm flipping through my book map here at the point, going into mid-morning, session here. So you can imagine I'm just flipping through. I just land back on Nikola. And at this point, the stock is beginning to kind of, hold back around 14. It dropped down and it wasn't breaking any lower at the time, right? At least here. So I'm looking at Nikola on my TradeStation chart and I'm saying, well, wait a second. If the other EV stocks are beginning to make its, move back up again, there was a stock ride that was making a really big pop at the time. I thought Nikola could go with it. Well, I ended up jumping back in. I took another entry on this trade at 1401 right here. It was holding over 14. Things were looking pretty good. But here's the issue. This stock was failing to break not just higher, but failing to cleanly break back through this level at 1405. Right? Right over here. It's just failing to pop higher from there. Well, we know 14 is a big level, but this shows 1405 is also a really strong level for today. Well, if this fails to, break through this really big level on the way up, folks, the stock's not just going to sit there. So there's only one other way it's going to go. I ended up getting out on this next trade at 13.98. I took a 3-cent loss, which is fine. I don't care about the, 3-cent trade, but I don't care about it because look what happened after. I didn't have to deal with any of this BS, right? So it just goes to show, well, how long do you need to, hold on to your trade for? I mean, where do you set your stop? Every trade's different. Every trade provides its own levels. Every trade is different than the next. But generally speaking, again, just fall back to the same two rules that I provided you before. My best entries to buy a stock are directly after the stock breaks through a big level going up, but then also when a big volume level gets filled, we're going to see a pretty big result after. You just can't hope and assume that that direction is going to be the direction that you want, right? That the market doesn't, revolve around Daniel F on YouTube or Mitch Connor. Welcome back, Mitch on YouTube. Mitch, I hate to break it to you, bud, but the market does not revolve around you. Market doesn't revolve around me, right? Market doesn't revolve around Kennedy or Lynette or Norman live inside our trading room. Fausto uses the 30-second rule when he trades, right? Has anybody here in the live trading room heard about the 30-second rule? Bit of a loaded question because everyone has heard about the 30-second rule live inside the Cybergroup room, right? So it's simply to say that if a stock is not moving in the direction that you're looking for within 30 seconds or so, probably best to get out. So that is exactly the same line of thinking that I bring to you here. And 30 seconds, folks. I mean, for all of us live inside Cybergroup, I feel that you know this, but I'm just going to say it, right? As much as I just said, the market doesn't revolve around Mitch or Daniel F on YouTube or me. Well, the market doesn't revolve around Fausto Pugliese or Fausto's 30-second rule. Market makers don't have a stopwatch and like, up 30 seconds. All right, time to drop the stock. It's just not the case. So you can't rely on 30 seconds as a guaranteed time. It's just simply to say, if the stock is not moving in your direction soon enough, and if you're taking that trade from a really important level, then the stock's just going to begin to move the other way more often than not. So it's just best to get out, right? From Joyce, question from Joyce on or inside the trading room. She's asking, does Bookmap level 4 here, as we nickname it, give you indication of which direction the orders are leaning? I'm a bit confused by the phrasing of the latter end of that question, Joyce. It's to say this: level 4 Bookmap here provides the same type of data as level 3. They just painted on this map for you. So this was an order that was out here at the market open at 14 bucks. This was an order on the ask. It's a group of sellers at the time, and without Bookmap, you would just simply see that on level 3 on the TradeStation matrix. When the market opened up this morning for Nikola, as it was beginning to move, you would see a bigger order here at the time at 14. So in terms of the direction the orders are leaning, you read that the same way as you would read level 3. Level 3 Bookmap, that shows orders that are looking to be filled. So in terms of what happens after those orders get filled, that's where we need to read time and sales. We need to read the tape to see if the foot is truly on the gas pedal. When you put your foot on the gas pedal for a car, obviously it drives forward. I mean, so long as you have your car drive. But it's to say, at least when your foot's taken off the gas pedal, well, what happens? The car slows down. Time and sales is our gauge for that. That leads us to think if the foot's on the gas pedal for a trade or not. That's something that we take a lot of time to talk about in the phase 1 and 2 courses here at Cyber Trading University. We most recently went over that just last month in April's set of classes. All right. Question from Nicholas on the or inside the trading room. He's asking, when exiting this trade, did you look at the time and think that is getting close to 11 a.m. Eastern time? 100%, Nicholas. That's something I didn't verbally bring up just before, right? But I really appreciate you asking that, and that is very factual. I was looking at this begin to kind of make this rounded top. I looked at the time and I was like, oh man, this isn't too good. Now, there are stocks that hold strong throughout the morning and trend up throughout the day, right? So it's definitely possible. Just look at Ride. This was the one I was mentioning before. This was flying on up as Nikola was, choppy here at this point. So I was hopeful that this would go up with the other EV stocks. Workhorse, another EV today that made a big move. LI going into 1030, at least that ran nicely. So, this one ended up topping off right around the same time as Lee, but it's not guaranteed that 1030 is reversal time for every stock. So I thought this had some momentum left to try and, see this squeeze up higher. Simply didn't happen. It was worth the trade as long as you take a very conservative loss after and you just move on to another stock or perhaps reposition yourself to enter again later on. To see 14 and 1405, two major price levels from today, it ended up falling down from those prices. Easy to say it bounced from around 1360. Is it possible to get a bounce from 1360 and jump in? Anything's possible, but I would have to see if there's an iceberg order there, anything for me to feel confident to enter exactly there. Otherwise, when this begins to spike back up, I still have to treat not just 14 as a major level, but 1405. So even here, going into the mid-morning, if you thought because of this, squeeze back up that Nikola would end up beginning to break higher, well, before it dropped, you weren't really too wrong with anticipating a potential move up higher. Almost looks like a mini inverse head and shoulders beginning to build. But you could see otherwise if it's failing to break out over this very important level, 1405. It's not just going to stop at 14 and stay in this range all day. So is it worth holding on to that trade? No. Now, I bring that up because, for anyone that's new to Cyber Trading University, any students live inside the trading room at least, I know a lot of us come from a swing trading background or investing background where you're setting stops, but not nearly as, close to where you enter from, not as conservative of a stop. But in terms of day trading, it's a different ball game. You're dealing with much faster movers. And with that, if you're at the right place just at the wrong time, that could lead to quite a big move just going against you. All right. AGEN is a great example of that. I know one of our traders was looking for a short on this stock from earlier today. This stock AGEN, I have a whole bunch of lines up here, so I'll explain this in a second. But it's to say, though, that this AGEN stock was also another good stock from this morning in pre-market. It opened up around 8:45 Eastern time. Good news came out on it. I'll get the quick blurb on the AGEN stock, but no, we're not going to trade this stock because of the news. We're going to trade this stock because of the direction that it's moving in potentially. We're going to trade this stock because of the big iceberg orders that we may see on level 3 or the big transactions that have already been filled. And that's on the time and sales. But anyway, AGEN shares trading higher after the company, along with Bristol Myers, announced an exclusive global license agreement. Looks like AGEN will receive a $200 million upfront payment and up to $1.36 billion. How about that in milestone payments? So sounds like pretty good news for the company, right? Well, ended up beginning to drop off leading into the market open, right? Like if you're looking at this stock and the direction that it's moving in leading into the market open, it was beginning to move up here, going into 9 o'clock, but it started to flatten out. It ended up holding a really strong resistance here at $4.40. And at this point, going into the market open, it was starting to drop. It broke down from that price. It was beginning to, make a lower high, you can call it here, and pull back. So, the stock was up, from the prior day's close. It was up off of news. Good news came out. But folks, that does not mean that this stock is going to just make the perfect, pretty run that you would want to take part of. And if anything, the stock is shortable. I don't know if you folks realize that, but on TradeStation here, it doesn't say the initials HB next to the ticker. This stock is actually shortable going into this morning for those of us that have TradeStation. Nikola, just for reference, notice it says HB next to it. So it means it's hard to borrow. You can't short it, or it's very difficult to get shares. So, I'm just saying this maybe could have been a good short opportunity if this was failing to break higher. Just couldn't short it. AGEN, though, was a potential short opportunity. And I actually bring that up because, well, hey, if this stock is dropping going into the market open, and let's say if we happen to see a lot of selling going into the market open, then I'm going to be more led to believe that this stock is going to continue to drop off shortly after the open. Doesn't mean I'm going to just instantly jump in short, but if I happen to see this stock, and this is contrary to my rule for a long, but my best entries to short a stock are directly after the stock breaks through a big level on the way down, right? That's the complete opposite rule that I had brought up for a long trade to buy a stock. So here's what I'll say. What happens after the market opens up? And the keywords here are if. But what happens after the open if this stock makes a small little squeeze up? But what happens if it breaks below a big support level? Well, if this stock breaks through a big level on the way down, then that could quantify a good short opportunity. Now I'll bring up level 4 book map here, and I want to show you what I did on this stock. I had alluded to this just before. I actually started by going over my position on the AT&T stock, but I told you before even that, I actually traded AGEN here before that, and I'll explain what I did here. So when the market opened, this alongside AT&T were really like one of the two stocks I was more honed in on. So I'm not like flopping around all over the place looking at all of these stocks. I'm not, just scanning through the percent gainers list at 9:30. I'm locked in on these two. That's it. So between AGEN here, you could see, well, actually, here, I'll bring up Bookmap to show this more. When the market opened this morning, much like I showed on AT&T, the opening bell print on AGEN was a 420,000, or I'm sorry, it was a 218,000 share print priced at $4.20. It's my trader's dyslexia kicking in there. So with such a big print either way, 218K, like you could see at $4.50 here after the market opened, folks, there was a 47,000 share iceberg there. That's huge. Well, if that's big, then exactly how big and powerful and important should I factor in this 218,000 share transaction to be? So I normally don't do this. Really. I mean, I instruct this in class to not trade the first 3 to 5 minutes after the market opens because you're going to see some more wild swings. If you're less uncertain about market direction, you shouldn't be trading the first 3 to 5 minutes here. However, if you're more experienced, if you're a student that's been with CTU for a number of years and has a good groove and knows exactly what they're doing and knows exactly what they're watching in terms of the opening print or big icebergs, then as long as you manage the trade well, it could be to your advantage. So I ended up jumping in on this trade as a short right out the gate. I waited for this to pop over this line, this $4.20 price. And only when it came back down through this level did I pull the trigger to short. So when this ended up breaking back below this opening bell print line, I got in at $4.18 right here. Big drop. So I ended up thinking that there was a chance that this would end up giving me way more. I mean, if you actually look in pre-market, looking at the book map, the shade of orange here at 382, that is, it looks like some sort of order on the bid that was there that could have been a bit of a support. So as this drops down, I see this break below 4. I thought there was a chance of this beginning to break down much more. I thought this would be for a really good short opportunity for, 40, maybe even 50 cents. That'd be a hell of a catch for a $4 stock, no? Well, this ended up beginning to squeeze back up. I gave it an extra shot here, so, I was hanging on. It re-breaks below 4. When this re-breaks below 4, I'm thinking that I'm going to get my drop. I'm thinking that this is going to be a really good drop down to at least 382, perhaps a lot lower. 350 next major support on the bid. 50-cent level, right? I know one of us inside the trading room was just asking, what do you mean by 50-cent levels and whole numbers? Start from the number 1, 150, 2, 250, and so on and so forth. So 350, big level. I thought there was a chance that with this re-breaking through this big level, $4, that we could see this drop more. So I held on. Now watch what happens. I want to show you what happens here. Look at the, I want you to focus your eyes right here. Keep your eyes focused right here where my cursor is. I'm going to drag book map more to the right. Keep your eyes focused right here. So what happens, folks? What happens on this trade? A big buyer popped up, right? This guy's screwing up my whole plans. I wanted this to drop off a hell of a lot more. But, and I'll make it even prettier, there seems to be as much as like an 85,000 share iceberg that popped up at $3.85. So as this ended up popping up, I just said, screw it. I got out of my short right at 4. So I got 18 cents. I was content, just to take the trade to begin with. It was a very clean trade. And I say this all the time as well. Every trade begins with the entry, with just getting in. So you want to position yourself to take trades with the momentum and to take them with a really big volume based level. So you know what? The fact that I retained a big enough profit, that was all started off by my entry, getting in immediately after it broke down below this price. So you know what? I got a decent amount out of it. I was content with getting out right here at 4. I could have held on a bit longer. It looks like it dropped down a little bit more. I thought it was going to sucker me back in and like crash even further. And well, thankfully, I didn't leave too much on the table because after, well, this ended up beginning to make its ascent back above 4. So, for anyone on the flip side, because I'll be honest, most of us here were not as jumpy to try and short this stock. I mean, it was up off of good news and it was cheap. So why not try and, look for a pop, a bounce, a run up on this stock? I mean, hey, again, like I said, it came out with good news, like a $200 million licensing agreement, 1.6 billion, I think, across a number of years. There's a reason the stock made a pop to begin, folks. So I'm sure that most of us were looking for a move back up on this stock or a pop or a run. So I got the short. I wish I wish I could say I jumped back in on this trade long. After that one trade, I ended up staying away from this stock after, but it ended up beginning to make its move, and easy enough to say. But when this ends up breaking back through this level, that's your buy. That's your buy entry right here. And if not here, it's easy to say in hindsight, but as this breaks back below 4, if this fails to, break down below 4 and run down lower, well, right here seemingly is a false breakdown. And if it makes a false breakdown, then it's worth the opportunity to look for a bounce and a buy. So easy to say again, but when this breaks below, but right back through this level as it's going back up, right away after, this would be your entry to try and jump back in on right here. And since it's led to a nice pretty move. All right. Now, as far as what this stock will do later on today, I'm definitely still interested in it because, well, a couple of things. Number one, like I'd said before, the stock is still shortable. So if this fails to make its big, grand, virtuoso move up, well, it looks like there was already a good short opportunity here when it broke back below $4.20, the opening bell print price from this morning. That was the opening bell, print price from the open here today. So this could have been a good short opportunity. Maybe if it kind of breaks down below 4 later on, that could lead to another run down to perhaps even 350. We'll see. But the fact that this stock is shortable to begin, at least it piques my interest because if this was hard to borrow and it dumped off, then obviously I'm just watching the grass grow and not watching anything that I could capitalize on. So if it was hard to borrow and it was just doing this, I would just move on. But if this isn't breaking out higher, then at least we could try and trade it on the way down. All right. The other reason I like this stock really quick, and I'll get to this later on in the afternoon as I do the afternoon meeting for all of us live inside Cyber Group. But the stock is not low float. The stock is a very high float stock, 192 million shares. That doesn't mean it trades 192 million shares day to day, folks. This stock prior to today has averaged maybe 3.4 million shares on average. But, that's still pretty good. It's just to say that, let's say, again, the key word is always if. Because we're not psychics out there. We're not guaranteeing any sort of movement. No one can. If anyone says they can, they're full of it. So it's just to say that what happens if smart money is still bullish on this stock? And what happens later on if this stock begins to break back over 420 and we see a lot more green coming in on the time and sales and bigger green volume bars here? Well, if that happens, then I'd be led to believe that this could make another run. So I would keep an eye out for that. And should that happen, based on the high float, it leads me to think that there is a chance that this stock could continue to be tradable across the day. All right, Lynette with a quick question here inside Cyber Group. The opening bell print is the close, open, or low of the price. Well, it's in the name, Lynette. Opening bell. Right there. I was mentioning just before at 9:30, we see this at the market open, the opening bell print, right? Now, we also see what's called the closing bell print. That's what I nickname it. So you tend to see at the market open a very big, transaction on the tape. Bookmap, shows a big dot. Same to be said at the market close. So we talk about that heavily within the phase 2 curriculum, Lynette. We talked about that just last month, actually. If you go back into phase 2 from April, lessons 1 and 2. It's a 2-hour breakdown I did on it. All right, let me see. Any other questions I missed here? Let me just double check on the live trading room side. I have a couple of things through email I want to jump to before we finish up. And then for anyone on YouTube, on Facebook Live, I see a bunch of us joining us here today, which I must say I appreciate you folks joining us here today. We typically do this simulcast maybe 2 or 3 times across the whole calendar year. Supposed to do it last week. I feel that you folks know that at this point, but I was happy to get it done here for you folks today. If you have any questions, certainly type it in the chat board on YouTube or Facebook Live. I want to jump back to, what was the one? Not Nikola. AT&T, right? You're saying with AT&T, yeah, this failed to break out over 30. It's just getting choppy. It's not surprising, but it's just to say that move wasn't there for the taking yet. Like we were saying, if you bought right above the opening bell print price at $29.90, if you set a very conservative stop to take you out at scratch or a -1, worth it. And for right now, it's still shaking around here. So maybe later on today, when there's more momentum in the market, we'll see this make the better run. But for right now, it doesn't seem like it's ready to do exactly that. Just going through my inbox, folks, really quickly. That was probably great radio there. Silence just for a few seconds. I just want to go through my inbox just to make sure that we have any questions, or if I skipped over any questions, at least before we finish up. Here we go. Okay, so I had a question sent in. Okay, this is actually not from a student. This is from one of us on YouTube Live. So I appreciate you sending this in. This is from Roger. Roger, I don't know where you're located, but great to have you join us here for this week's edition of Traders Talk, Roger. More or less, he's just asking on a trade, and we kind of covered this already, but I have no problem doing this on just any other stock. This is something that we need to talk about on a day-to-day basis, and we need to focus on really trade by trade. But it's more or less just asking again, like, what do you do for your risk management? Do you always set stops on your positions? How long do you hold on for a trade for? So I'm not going to go too deep into that because we did cover a good portion of that just alone on AT&T and a couple of other trades. How about this? I got a stock right now, and I was trying to go through a stock on my book map to use as a good example. How about this? I'm going to show you this because I mentioned before, I'm flipping through my book map, my level 4, and there are times where I'll stumble upon a stock. A lot of these right now aren't doing anything. All right, that's fine. Here's our AT&T. Here's AMC. It's like a dead duck. Look at that. ULBI. This thing just made like a 40-cent pop out of nowhere. So let me turn to this trade right now. And at least for the meantime, this does not indicate that this is going to break new highs by the afternoon. It seems like it's making a nice pop thus far. But here's what I'll do. I know that there's resistance on this trade at 11, a whole number price level. There's a very good chance that it could shake right around this $11 resistance and then maybe make a pop later on. See? So I'll bring up Bookmap here really quickly one more time before we finish up Traders Talk. For all of us live inside Cyber Group, I'm going to keep it on the screen. You know that we're just going to go right back to our regular chatting or calling out here going into lunchtime. Typically not a whole lot happening going into this time of the day, but certainly this stock is now on our radar again. So look what happened. This just ended up popping right over 11 or up to 11. I think it broke over 11 here by a couple cents. Well, there's our first shake. So you want to hesitate. You want to wait a bit on this, on a volatile pop like this, because if it's a fake pop, then from there you're going to get stuck holding on to a bag. And at least here, The question is if. What happens if we continue to see more buying, more green, this break back over 11? If not right now, then maybe in the next 5-10 minutes. Well, if that's the case, and should that happen, then I'd expect this stock to begin to move higher. Maybe up to 11.50, maybe up to 12. Or first, maybe it has to get up to the opening bell print price here. This is a 44,000 share transaction, so that's not really that big in the grand scheme of things. I mean, not as big as what we've seen on other trades, but I'll still respect that at $11.39 right here. 11.39. Let me just draw a line right at 11.39. We'll come back to this trade certainly during the afternoon meeting for all of us on YouTube, Facebook Live. If you're not going to be joining us live inside the Cyber Group room, coming up, then once we catch back together later on today, then we'll come back to this price, 11.39. So if this breaks back over 11 here coming up, then our next resistance is not necessarily right at 11.50. It's at 11.39, that opening print. Now, I'd say it could be both of those prices on my chart above 11, these two. That can create a range of resistance as well. But it's just for me to say if, and that's the key word, the condition for any trade, if this breaks back over 11, should we see more buying off the 11, then I'm anticipating this stock to make a pretty big move from that price. And at least at first, I'd see this make a move up towards 11.39, the opening bell print. All right. All right, folks, we're going to finish up Traders Talk right now. I appreciate you sticking with me here for the hour. Really quickly, for all of us on YouTube and for all of us on Facebook Live, I'm actually going to type my contact information here very quickly. Just give me a quick second. Oh, that's pretty cool. I can do that. Nice. Moment here. All right, so for all of us on YouTube, for all of us on Facebook Live, oh, that did not come out right. Damn. You could always send over a quick email. My name is Josh Levitan. Again, I'm the senior instructor here at Cyber Trading University alongside Fausto Pugliese. I host the afternoon meeting. I typically do that weekdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. If you folks have any questions, feel free to join us live inside the Cyber room. Go right down to the link on the banner below to get started. Otherwise, beforehand, if you'd like to send over a quick trading question my way, send it right over to my email address, josh@ctutrading.com. All right, folks, for all of you there, I look forward to it. I look forward to catching back later on today, 2:30 at least, for all of us live inside Cyber Group. We're just going to keep the good times going. We'll keep chatting away, making call outs, taking us into lunchtime here, see if there's anything else we could try and capitalize on. I'll talk to you all later on today. Take care.